Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the All Words Are Free podcast. So in this audio-only episode, I'm going to be carrying on with the special episode series related to the release of my second poetry collection, My Fire Vision. But it'll be nice to get the special out there and hopefully carry on with these kind of more snippet episodes alongside my longer form episodes. I think that'll be really nice. I'm kind of getting a plan together for longer term. So yeah, I just want to keep going. Up the profile as well on Substack and social media. I have a note every day to remind me to post on Substack, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. Other platforms are available, and I just, with the day goes on and stuff, and sometimes I don't know what to post, and yeah, I'm trying to work on that side of things. But yeah, today we're going to be chatting about my novel. We're going to do a little novel deep dive. And this sounds all very self-indulgent, but I suppose there is a relative self-indulgence about the fact of doing a podcast, and it's just me talking and you're listening to my voice. And yeah, so today, I'm going to be talking about my process, where it all started, my characters, and just kind of, chat through a little bit of, one of my biggest writing projects to kind of correlate with the release of my collection. Hope you enjoy. So where did it all begin? That's a great question. So I first started writing my novel, this is going to sound so not cliche, but kind of like I started during COVID, but it was a time that obviously you couldn't go out or anything, or started during lockdown, I suppose I should say. And obviously it was a time where you were spending a lot of time at home, and I basically wrote every day. It kind of started with, there's a lot of different routes of inspiration. I've always watched kind of murder mystery style kind of detective-y TV shows with my dad, and so that kind of thing, like police, whatever. So that was an inspiration from one aspect. And then, you've got like your Agatha Christie's and the kind of film or TV adaptations as well. That is like precisely what I'm trying to emulate. That is like my ultimate dream, to have it made into like one of those like Christmas special like TV shit. That'd be sick. And then I was watching Peaky Blinders at the time, and I blitzed through it. It's hilarious. And that was a key spring point. I actually wrote the first bit of my novel after I'd watched an episode of Peaky Blinders, which is hilarious. And yeah, there's a few different influences. I think I was studying The Great Gatsby at the time as well, so that kind of feeds into it a little bit. It's kind of that literary, poetic kind of thread. I love a good leitmotif or a good theme. So there are a few of those scattered about as well. But if that gives you the general vibe of the novel, then I'm glad. If that makes absolutely no sense, then yeah, to be fair, I agree. But yeah, I think, so they're my kind of main inspirations. And of course, I love reading anyway. And I've written for a while. I'd started stories and novel ideas and all that jazz previously. I'd actually, this isn't the first novel I wrote. The first novel I wrote was when I was about 16, and it was about a manor house where there's teenagers in this manor house, and there's kind of odd goings on and whatever, which that sounds like so bad. But I kind of do want to go back to it to kind of edit it a bit, but that was my first novel per se, because I finished it. But previously I hadn't finished things. And yeah, so then Suitable Company came along, which is the name of my novel. And I wrote it majoritively over the lockdown period. the great bulk of it, and I finished it, and it was great. But I'm still editing it now, alas. I gave it out to a few people to read and kind of give feedback and all that jazz. I've said that twice now. And then I took it back, made edits, and I've edited it a few times now. And now I'm looking back at it because let me think about this. It's 4 years on. So I wrote the bulk of the novel while I was in sixth form. And edited it, over like first year of uni and all that jazz. And oh my God, that's the third time now. It's a nervous tick. And yeah, so I did most of the editing over first year of university. But now I'm in my fourth year. This old. I look back at, I've experienced a lot since my first year. I've changed, I've matured. And I look back on the original novel and I kind of want to change it up a bit. I think there's scope for it to be better, basically. I read back some things and I love it, and other things I find it a bit stilted. My writing style's definitely developed since then. And a novel is a labour of love. You're going to want to change it all the time, or at least, you can constantly keep in the editing stage, but there needs to be a point where you get it out there, and that can be really difficult. It's difficult to let people in, but I love talking about my novel, hence why I'm doing a podcast episode on it, because I can just go off on one. I've already gone off topic. I was talking about inspiration in this section, and now I'm talking about editing, but I think it's important to be excited about your novel. And a key point of inspiration for me as well is music and things like mood boards. So when I first had this kernel of an idea, I put together mood boards with, pictures of like actors or figures or whatever. And then songs for particular characters or particular scenarios. Funnily enough, a lot of the situations within my novels. So there's a sequel now, which is ongoing, and I'm currently writing the sequel, and she's very long. The first novel was about 65,000 words, which isn't very long. It's about like 200 pages maybe. My second novel is humongous. It's actually terrible. It's already like 3 times the length, and it's like, oh no, something's gonna have to go. But anyway, besides the point, music, I get inspiration from music in the way that, it helps me think of scenarios. As a particular song comes on and you think, it might be on a shuffle, or it might be like the suggested songs on Spotify, and I hear a particular song and I'm like, oh my God, that's going in the novel playlist. It's brilliant. I love, because it keeps you excited about it, and I do adore these characters. I mean, I've been with them for 4 years now, so yeah, they kind of feel like a part of me, which is so cheesy, but it's so true. And yeah, I think they've kind of grown with me as well. So at its core, Suitable Company is a murder mystery. So it follows the lives of the people in the fictional town of Blackvale, where there is the town and then there is a hill nearby, and on top of that hill is the manor house, Blossom House. I know, so adventurous. It's such a non-corny name. But yeah, so there is the town of Blackvale and then there is Blossom House, and what happens is there is a dinner party for an arranged engagement, and there are X number of guests, particularly a kind of class divide concept as well, which kind of links into something I'm going to mention later. But it brings the people together in more ways than one, in interesting ways. Subplots. I love a subplot. I've got so many subplots. I mean, novel 2, no wonder it's already about 700 word document pages, because there's that many subplots. I'm actually awful. But you know, this is what the refining stage is for. I'm just too inspired by my playlist. But it's set in the kind of early 1920s. And yeah, so it's got that kind of, everything's very Art Deco. It's got that kind of jazzy. So particularly, it's very specific. But for the TV adaptation of Suitable Company, I have a song in mind by Gabriel's that would be for the opening credits. So it's very jazz, kind of vibes, very jazz vibes. Love it. And yeah, it's the war. So there are characters who were soldiers, and that kind of comes into it as well. I'm not afraid of a flashback. You know, there's some flashbacks in there, because it's how it has to be. But now let's talk through some of the characters. Now comes my brief overview of the characters. Oh, I love them so much. It's actually terrible. So sometimes when I listen to songs, they feel like real people. I don't know how to describe it, but you know when you're reading a book and obviously you picture, or you may picture particular characters, but because it's been 4 years, they actually feel like real people. Like they feel like my friends. I'm like, oh my God, who are these? Anyway, daughter of the manor's owner, Luther Cottrell, who's obviously her father. I says it's not obvious, but he is her father. And they are the only members of the family in the house. And then there are the staff members. So you've got Richards, the butler, Mrs. Sparr, the housekeeper, and then there is Helen, who is Loretta's personal maid, and she becomes significant later on. So I'll talk through Helen. But yeah, so Loretta is about 22, sort of that sort of age, 21, my age basically. And God, that's weird, man. Thinking that she's my age, oh my God. Because obviously I was like 18 when I wrote it, which I suppose isn't that long. Oh my God, she's my age. That's mad. Anyway, so Loretta's kind of on the surface of it, kind of your classic upper class daughter sort of thing. And the arranged marriage is between her, and that is one of the key things straight from the start. And this is that writing undertone, that writing subplot, that Loretta is a writer, a mathematician, a chemist. They're completely different things. He's a mathematician. He's a mathematician who likes chemistry. It's very specific. He is an Oxford man. Oh my God. I really reached there. This is before I came to Oxford, so like, come on guys. He wasn't originally an Oxford man, to be fair. He became an Oxford man when I was in Oxford. But he's an Oxford man. Have established themselves almost naturally. I find that when I'm writing I find that when I'm writing, sometimes it just flows very naturally, and I just write speech or particular situations or come up with scenarios, and a lot of the time when I start writing a particular section or a scene, it kind of just flows in a particular direction. I may have a very distinct idea of where I want it to end up, or I may have a very distinct idea of the beginning, but not really where it's going to go. And I kind of like seeing something that's going to happen that may become then a big thing later on. For example, like, say two characters meeting, and I write a particular scene, and then at the end of it, there's a little something that happens, or a little kind of image that I really like, and then I pull that through the novel as like a leitmotif, which wasn't there originally and only became an idea when I'd actually been writing the scene. And yeah, with Loretta, she's morphed with me. She's changed over the two novels. I think in the second one, obviously, she's older. So the second novel is set between Blackvale, which is a northern town, which I should have mentioned previously, and London. And in this, it's about 3 to 5 years later. I haven't quite rooted down in that. But Loretta is obviously more mature, but she's more sure of herself. I think a key point in the first novel is that she's very uncertain because she is young, and she hasn't experienced a lot of things because of the bubble that she's in the manor house. And the story is as much about relationships and the development of a person, or the development of oneself. And there's layers of class, of sexism, of racism. There's different layers to the novel, which I really like. I really like that sort of thing when I'm reading. And so it was important to me for it to not just be a straight murder mystery, but also to say something. And so I kind of class it as, yes, mystery fiction, but also literary fiction in the way of how I write, but also the themes and the things that it deals with. Another key layer to the story and the kind of secondary group, the characters who are, again, hold a dear place in my heart, are the Enger family, so Enger. And the interesting thing about the Enger family is I think it's post-World War One. She does just say things which can get her into a bit of a stick sometimes. But she's very straight, no nonsense. She's quite aloof, and quite difficult to get into her core. But she is inherently quite a caring person. She cared for her mother, for example. That's Bella. I do like Bella. I have fun writing Bella because she just says things, and I'm like, I love it because it's like I wish I could be like Bella. But here we are. And then, oh my god, my favourite man in the world. And then there is James. Kind of go through all the minor... Well, okay. There's a lot of, like, minor characters as well, in the way of, like, in the town. There's different smaller characters. There is a group, a gang, I suppose you could call them, who come to the town later on, and that's all a big thread, and that's a big source of conflict. So there are a lot of layers to this. Well, this is a murder mystery. Where is our police officer? Well. So I suppose you'd say, if there was a poster, okay, I'm going off thread. I don't know how long this thing is. Oh my god, nearly 20 minutes, okay. If there was a poster of Suitable Company, the film, the TV adaptation, the radio show, it would be Loretta in the middle because she's a slay queen. And then it would be, one side would be James, and the other side would be the inspector. Oh my god, love this man. I love this man as well. I love them all. Have a lot of fun with my Pinterest boards. And yeah, so our police officer, our investigating officer, which again is another key link between the town and the manor house, in the way that obviously the inspector lives in and works in the town, but he goes to the manor house because of the murder that occurs. So Inspector Frank Channing, j'adore, okay. I'm getting all giddy. This is hilarious. He investigates the murder. He's not cold. Well, he is cold. He's very apathetic. There we go, that's the right word. He's very apathetic, and he's very much, I'm going to do my duty, I'm going to get justice, and then we are done here. He's very rooted in that. He's got this kind of tunnel vision, and alongside that, he's very difficult to break into as a character. And you kind of see as it goes on that he has shut off people, to put it that way. He's very shut off for particular reasons, in the way that he prioritises his job over anything else, over other things that are very important, but he neglects them. And throughout, he is investigating, but a key feature, there are kind of two. The most key feature of the novel in the murder mystery primary thread, if this were to be a tree, the murder mystery would be the trunk, and then everything else would be the branches. And as far as the murder mystery thread goes, Loretta begins her own investigation. Not from the aspect of she doesn't believe that he can get justice for the person that's murdered. Spoiler, it's not Loretta who's murdered. Shocker. I'm not going to say who's murdered. I feel like, take a guess. But yes, so she starts her own investigation. And so they kind of have these parallel sort of investigations, and he becomes quite frustrated with the fact that she's kind of worming in on it, per se, and that she's getting involved, and he just wants to get on with the job, and he finds her very interfering. But time goes on and we shall see. But I really like the different dynamics, and between our key three, there's a nice kind of range of dynamics, which I like, and I think developing the characters alongside each other is really important for that. I think, having a key kind of idea of what a character is or who a character is very important. But then I also think that as you write, those characters can become something of their own, and they can even change from the original ideas of them, or develop as time goes on. And yeah, there are interesting dynamics, and I don't know whether to go into them because I don't want to spoil the entire thing. But yeah, I don't know what there is history between the inspector and James in the way that, well, on different levels, but from petty theft to whatever's going on when he comes. As a gauge, the inspector's only about 30. He's just I don't know, fast tracked or something. Who cares? It doesn't matter. But the history there is obviously they went to war at the same time. They used to be friends. There's all an interesting dynamic there, and it's interesting to think who's my favourite person to write, and I think it varies, especially now I'm doing the second novel. There's a load of new characters there, and I'm not going to go into that because otherwise this episode is going to be so long, especially with 700 A4 word pages. But I like Loretta because she's kind of like a little. So now I'm going to quickly just talk through the writing process. Obviously I have touched on this already, But I think that it's one of those things for me. Like I say, I started during lockdown, which obviously gave me a lot of time to work on it. Now I am doing my master's project. I'm, out in a lab all day, and then there's a lot of obviously work besides that. And I have a few extracurricular commitments as well. So I get less time to work on my writing. I still get like a decent amount of time. I still write like at the weekends. I make sure to do a little bit. But also I do find that sometimes when I have the time, I'm either like too tired to do anything or I just don't feel inspired. And that can be quite frustrating. You have a moment where you feel really inspired and really want to write, but you don't have the time because you're, doing something, different commitment, whatever. And then you finally do have the time, and then it's just like lights on, head empty. There's nothing coming out, or like nothing that you really like. And that can be really frustrating. I found it really frustrating in the past. And I think it's just how it is sometimes. I think sometimes it's like to not be afraid to step away from it when it isn't working. Because I think I'd rather like feel good when I'm writing and enjoy it than like try and force myself through because I happen to have a couple hours at the end of the day free. And I think my best writing comes from when I'm like well rested and feeling good. And yeah, it's difficult. I mean, sometimes like I really want to do something related to my novel, but maybe the writing isn't quite it. So I might do some plotting, or I might look at my Pinterest board or listen to some music or something, and sometimes it can lead to writing and sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay too. Reading as well, that gives me a lot of inspiration for the writing because it kind of influences how I write. I think it's important to just give yourself some grace. Writing a novel is a behemoth task. It's a labour of love. I think that you have to give yourself that grace to kind of step away from it for a bit. There was a period where I just didn't write anything for a long time. During like, especially the second year of university, I just didn't write because I was busy, but also I didn't have the time, and I was just probably not in the best mindset, but sometimes I did. And I think that's the thing about writing as well. The same with reading. It's very escapist, and I think the joy that I find in my novel is, and the characters and how I react about the characters is in part due to how they allowed me to escape from reality. I find myself still now like spending myself in their world, because it just allows you to step away from other things for a little bit. I think that's really important and a really nice thing to have. And that's why I like writing, but obviously there's different things for different people that works for them. But I think if you want to write a novel, and you kind of don't know where to start, I think honestly, like just getting a few words down is the biggest thing. If you're sitting down and I want to write something but you have no ideas, go on a Pinterest board and see a picture and think, oh, that kind of inspires me for something. I still do that sometimes when I really want to write, but I don't really know. And then I see a picture and I'm like, okay, this can give me an idea for a scenario. I'll write something. And sometimes that's developed into a whole thread in the novel. Sometimes it's not been anything, and, it doesn't matter. And I think also when you're writing a novel, don't be afraid to do some writing that isn't related to the novel. I think sometimes, you get so entrenched in a particular way of writing or particular characters or particular setting that it's nice to step out of that for a minute and kind of explore a different style. That's why I like poetry, because it allows me to, as I've mentioned before, poetry is very much more of a personal thing. It's my sort of thoughts and ruminations and feelings in the real world. And so that kind of, if I want a more direct, like, emotional outlet, poetry is kind of where I go. And And yeah, I think just like loving the process. You know, I'm probably still going to be writing this and editing it for a long time yet, but that's okay. And we'll kind of see where it goes. I just wanted to add a little bit about the editing process as well. So obviously, you know, you've got a novel or a story or a poem or anything, and it's complete, and you want to go back and give it a little change. As I mentioned before, you can really, or one can really get kind of deeply entrenched in this editing process. I definitely have done that in the way that I've like looked over it again and again and again. I think sometimes going into it with the right mindset as well. You know, you're going in to make something the best it can be. You're not going in to kind of, I don't know, berate yourself, I guess, in a sense. Things like first drafts, I think it's important to just write and then you go back and edit it a lot later. I think if you edit things as you go along, it's going to take a long time. And, you know, you may have ideas swimming about that never actually get down and then you forget or they change, you know. Writing a particular scene from one moment to the next, it's going to change the scene. And so I think it's important to write something when you're inspired for it. That's what I do. So this is kind of more of a writing note. And then I'll get back to the editing. But when you, like, for me, I write a scenario or a scene or a particular conversation when I'm inspired for it. I don't write chronologically, which can be a bit of a storyline hell when you're going back and trying to orient everything. But I just think I get the best product that way. Because, you know, say, for example, I'm really thinking about a character or I've listened to a song where it kind of makes me think of a particular interaction or scene, then I want to write that scene. If you force yourself to write something else, then you may lose that original burst of inspiration and even the kind of fire for that scenario. And so, yeah, I think it's important to, at least for myself, to write things kind of whenever I feel inspired for it. Have an idea of where the story's going to go and know the thread and know your key points, because otherwise things could kind of go a little bit awry. But having that rough idea, having the rough idea as a ground, but then springing off little bits of inspiration, that's kind of the way I work it. And so back to the refining stage. So, like I say, Suitable Company, numero uno, first one, has been through a few iterations. I think this is, I'm trying to think, the one that I'm working on now, where I am actually rewriting bits because of how my style has changed and the experience I've had and how that's kind of morphed my opinions of even some of the scenarios within the novel, the original version. This is about draft 4. I went through like a big edit not too long ago, and I kind of just read through it. And I saw like gaps, but I was like, this is fine. But no, I'm going to go back and proper hardcore edit it now. Because I think I was slightly attached to the original version. I think to a certain point you have to let that go a minute and kind of think, you kind of be as objective as you can. And then of course it's very important to get secondary opinions as well. The first person who read my novel was my dad, and he kind of helped me with the more kind of historical logistic stuff, but also with flow as well. And you know, I think it's difficult to let people see it, especially when you look back and like feel embarrassed by the kind of way it was written, in a sense. This is how I did with the original. I've definitely grown up, I think. But it's important to get others' opinions, because especially if you give it to somebody who you know well, or you know, your friend, your family, people who you know are going to take care of it, they're going to have nice things to say as well as bad. You know, anyone is going to, well, I say bad, it's just, they're not picking out the worst things, they're helping you to improve it. I think it's important to kind of make that distinction and recognise that distinction. And yeah, I think obviously you don't have to change things that people suggest either. So speaking of literary agents and publishers, so currently I've sent my novel out to some literary agents. Of course, I'm going back and editing it now, as kind of, I sent it out and then I looked back and thought, I'm not biggest fan, so I started editing it, and like, who knows, like, if it is picked up, I can always present these edits, which I suppose isn't the canonical way of doing it, but hey ho. But if it isn't picked up, I've got a fresher version that can then go out at a later date. It's all very flexible, you know. I'm lucky in the way that I have an alternative that writing can be very much a thing on the side, and we'll see where it goes. You know, right now I'm very much like, I've got my path forward in science as well. I mean, we'll see at the end of this year, of course, but that's a different story. And yeah, I just think that, like, I love writing, and I love this novel, and it'll be nice to get it out there to more people. I'm still kind of, you know, I'm very open to, like, I love talking to people about it. And it would be nice to kind of, I don't know, hear your opinions. Maybe isn't the best way of saying it, because obviously you only know what I've just said. But no, it'd be nice if, like, anyone wanted to give it a read, give me some feedback. Because yeah, it's like my child, and I really do love it. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's kind of all I wanted to say. I very much freewheeled this one, non-scripted, kind of coming out of my brain, and that's it. So I hope this was all right, an all right listen. And I realise that it's been quite long. It's longer than I expected it to be, but that's okay. It'll take longer to edit than I expected, but that's fine. And I hope you will join me again soon. And have a lovely week. Let's keep talking.